G'day YouTube, Turbo Tristan here. Welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to try and do what we couldn't do last time, which is somehow try and fit this massive turbo into this engine bay and keep all of that dirty air conditioning down there. It's a bit of a challenge. I had an idea. It turns out that idea was no good because it was all in my mind and I didn't have a car to look at and measure up while I was going. So we've run into some snags. Stick around and we'll try and overcome this problem together. Welcome back to the channel, everyone. And now you'll remember a couple of weeks ago I had this car here. I had a full turbo kit laid out and we were going to try and use a PLM manifold, which was supposedly going to work with all the aircon and everything there. That was a massive fail. The distance between the engine and this fan was never going to happen. The manifold would have been, you know, inside the core here, so it just wouldn't have fitted at all. So my idea was to make a J pipe, and a J pipe is exactly a J, something that goes down and then straight back up. And I was going to put a flange on here, face the turbo this way, and then run the exhaust straight down there. The intercooler pipes were going to go down here and then underneath, but again, no space. So that kind of halted my work yesterday. I didn't want to pull everything apart and start hacking into this customer's car without talking to them, and yeah, he was doing things, so I couldn't get hold of him all day. We've since spoken. What we're going to look at doing is try and remove this fan shroud off the air conditioning condenser, see if that gives me any space where I can sink the turbo lower into the engine bay. I'm going to have to clock everything and do all that sort of stuff, but even still, it's going to be a massive challenge. There's just not a lot of room anywhere. If I remove the aircon, I know it will definitely fit because we fitted a million turbo kits. There's a million videos online of it happening and it's going to work. But that's not the aim of the game. So don't know what I'm going to do, and start by taking off the manifold and the heat shield, and we'll just see what sort of room we have to play with. All right, so I've clocked the turbo. I've removed the heat shield. I've removed the fan shroud, which is over there. And we still do not have enough room to be able to keep air conditioning, keep all of this, and mount a turbo there. We could put it underneath, but it's going to put it down so low, it's going to be level with the sump, and we don't want that because that's going to cause drainage issues. So now this creates a problem for me because I was in the plans, in the works of making my own turbo kit that would allow you to run air conditioning, run a T3, T4 turbo. The reason why I wanted to use that is because it's budget conscious. Honestly, not a very good turbo, but great for budget. You're still going to get boost, you're still going to get power, and they are the cheapest one. There's no denying that. The turbo kits that are on the market, or should I say that were on the market decades ago, those ones used a very, very small turbo, equivalent, if not smaller than a T25. Now that's the tiny turbo that comes standard on Nissan's SR20. Great turbo. Honestly, you don't need a massive turbo on a 1.6 stock internal single cam Honda engine. That's probably the last thing that you would want. In actual fact, if you did have a small turbo like a TD04 or a T25, something like that, if not even smaller, it would come on boost much quicker. It would give you a much stronger torque range and more broader power. In my opinion, having a small turbo like that would give your single cam slammer or your single jingle D16 the kind of torque and response that you would get out of a K-swap vehicle, just instant power, torque, all the way to redline, everything like that, if you had a much smaller turbo. So in my professional opinion, or just my general opinion, a small turbo, a TD04, even a TD03 or a T25, much more compact, much smaller housing, would definitely fit in there better. However, there's no Wuhan war whistle equivalent, so there's no cheap option. The cheapest option is a T3, T4, which is a monster. These came out on RB25s, RB30s. They're just a monster of a turbo. They are good for high revving engines because the big exhaust housing does flow a lot better. So for cars that are normally aspirated, that flow a lot of exhaust gas, they are pretty good. Otherwise, it's kind of overkill. They are a little bit laggy, so not ideal, but for budget conscious, which is why most of you are watching this channel, that's the go-to turbo. Nothing against it. The Wuhan war whistle definitely works well. And yeah, that's what we're sticking with. So what are we going to do? I've spoken to the owner, and much to his, like, the whole point of this build was to keep the air conditioning. He was adamant he wanted the aircon. Then when I told him all of this wasn't going to fit and it wasn't going to work, and I was just happy to pack it up and send it home, and he could sell the kit to someone else who was happy to lose their aircon, because he does have another car that is fast and is turbo, so doesn't need two. And he then said, don't use the aircon anyway, may as well turf it. So that's what we're doing. Because we're getting rid of that, there's no need to make a J-pipe, which, as cool and budget as it is, it's going to be pretty ugly. Because I was planning on using this standard manifold and then having a U-turn, J-shape, and then having a flange here, turbo, high mounted, and keep this manifold, which actually flows great. However, he did have this manifold, which was from the previous video, which wouldn't fit anywhere because of all of these extra flanges, wastegate flanges, etc. Now that we're going to get rid of all of that, we can fit this. So let's get to it. Everything's stripped out that needs to come out now that we've agreed to remove the aircon, as per usual. This is not an eBay off-the-shelf kit. This kit is done in conjunction with maxpeedingrods, turbo and intercooler, eBay intercooler pipe kit, and a PLM manifold. So this one's not just a straight bolt-on kit. There's a couple of bits I'll need to customize. The beauty of it is it runs an internal wastegate, which means it simplifies the whole system, and it's going to make it nice and quiet when I plumb it back up. So total sleeper. I'm just going to put the camera down for 2 seconds, mount the turbo, where it's going to go, check everything for clearance, and show you guys what we're in for. So 1 sec. So down here you can see this is the position that the PLM manifold, the 1320 manifold, puts the turbo, sucking hot air right off the fan, which is not ideal. I did spin it the other way. There was no room for me to get a tight radius 90 in there for the exhaust. This is all the way over, so there's no room for that there. I'll have just enough room down here to mount the exhaust. It's going to pretty much just twist down and around and shoot down through there. A nice tight bend, but it'll flow nicely and won't be restricted. We'll put in the exhaust O2 bung somewhere down there, and now I have to reclock the turbo, point this straight down, move the wastegate, spin the cartridge around, because there's the feed, there's the drain. So just a matter of loosening off all these bolts, spinning everything around to where I want it, and then we're good to go. So there's that bit done. Considering trimming some of this fan shroud here so it's gives me a little bit more room, we might be able to put a silicone elbow on there. I'm not really sure. It's probably going to hit the fan, but I'll probably just trim the corner of that out with a knife or something. It's not that hardcore, so that the turbo can get some nice hot airflow straight off the radiator. Okay, on to pulling apart the rest of it. All right, so what I'm doing now is called clocking the turbo. I often talk about this, but it's just a matter of spinning the turbo housing around to where you want it. So this is what inside of a turbo looks like. That's the compressor wheel there. And then this plate here has an O-ring all the way around it. Whoop. And then this just basically slips over, and when it's got no bolts holding it in, you can spin that to wherever you like. So for the purpose of this, I'm going to spin that just straight down, just like that. and I need to make it so that the wastegate can bolt back on. So that's that part done. We've loosened that off. We don't want to get any dirt or anything in there, but the turbo is going to now sit like this. So I need to make sure that this is the feed and that's the drain. So at the moment they're the other way around. So just take your 13 mil, crack all the nuts. Whoop. So now they're all loose, I can then spin the center cartridge around to where I want the drain. So just like that. Let gravity do all the hard work. Yep, that's it. And I've given myself enough room to get fittings on. And then just like a wheel nut, tighten it up in sequence. All right, so that's that side done. Now we need to put the compressor cover on. So for those of you that don't know, this is what the inside of a turbo looks like. The air gets sucked into here and then pushed through these small blades here are the ones that are pushing the air and compressing it, and these ones here are drawing in the air. So it draws in the air and then slips it down the side in here, and then it compresses through there. So just in case you weren't sure. So the wastegate bracket and everything that was supplied, perfect for standard sort of use, but where everything ended up when I've clocked the turbo, it's put the wastegate in a really bad spot, and it's not going to be able to function properly. So I've had to make a new bracket. I'm actually using one of these. It's an EG Civic door hinge. So we're keeping it Civic, keeping it in the family. I needed something that was strong and some good thick steel. So I'm just going to tack this up here and then get stuck into welding it up properly. So as you can see, it's quite dark and quite late on a Sunday night. That means 7 days straight working for me, but got to be on the grind. So here we are. Turbo is dummied in. There's only a couple of bolts holding it in, so this is not its final time in there, but it's in, manifold's in, air conditioning is gone. So I've begun work on the downpipe, as you can see there. Sorry, I just had to grab the light, and I had to make a bracket for the wastegate to make sure that it works. So as you can see, everything's on. I was going to call this the turbo kit with aircon build, but it's not. As you can see, it was pretty much impossible unless we put a tiny little baby turbo on there, which nobody likes that, although it probably would be really good for this engine. We'll leave it off here. I'll be back in the shed tomorrow night after work. So I'm going to work a full day, then come and work a full night, just so I can get content out for you guys, get the builds happening, get this one out in the traffic and boosting. So don't forget, spool up, like, share and subscribe, and we'll see you in the next video. Thanks for watching.